And let's go right ahead and get into the first segment, which is talking about some of the biggest questions for each and every single one of these Atlantic Division teams. So obviously, since I'm starting with the Atlantic Division, I'm going to continue on with the list with all the other divisions in future podcasts. Now, if you guys aren't really interested in this, just let me know and I won't continue doing it. But I just think that, it would be really interesting to just talk about some of the biggest questions for each and every single one of the NBA teams going into the next season. So let me just go ahead and pull up my notes real quick and pull up the slides so that way you guys can see. And the first team that we are going to be talking about is the Boston Celtics. Obviously, they're NBA champions and they're the best team in the NBA last season. So obviously, the biggest question for the Boston Celtics is, can this Celtics team be the first team in 6 years to win back-to-back championships? Because the last time we saw back-to-back champions was back when Kevin Durant was on Golden State. And before that, the last time we saw back-to-back champions was LeBron on the Miami Heat. And before that, let me think. Before that, which one was the other back-to-back champion? I believe that was the next back-to-back champion before the Miami Heat was the Lakers. Yeah, I believe that's what it was. That was and they won 3, so back to back to back if you really want to be technical. But yeah, these there haven't really been, at least in recent history, there haven't been as many repeat champions as there have in previous years. And really the biggest question for this is easily like the biggest question for Boston. Can they repeat and win one more time? And it's like that was the same. It was the same big question for the Denver Nuggets going into like last season. Like the biggest question for them for the last season was, can they repeat again? And so obviously the biggest question for every single championship team, in my opinion, is going to be, can they do it again? And the Bucks look like a potential dynasty after winning back in 2021, but Chris Middleton's injuries ended up being the downfall of basically, the entire hopes and dreams that the Bucks had before they acquired Damian Lillard. And there was obviously, logical explanation for why each of the last 5 championships before the Celtics were unable to repeat. But whether it be injuries, whether it be roster regression, or the rest of the league just catching up to them, like, will the Celtics fall into that same sort of rabbit hole as the other previous teams, where it's like every other team seems to catch up to them just like that? But let me know in the comments if you think there's a bigger question than this that needs to be answered for the Boston Celtics, because another question that I could really think of is, how will the Celtics maintain their roster in the future? That's like the other dying question that I want to know. But going into this season, I think there's no real need to worry about keeping the players in for the deep future now. Like right now, you're just looking to win back to back. Like right now, you're looking to win. And so the focus shouldn't be on long-term future, and the question shouldn't be on the future. It should be, can we win now? And obviously, the future is, I think that's, it's a later problem, especially with all of these luxury taxes and things like that. That is going to be a much later problem for the Boston Celtics that I don't think they should worry about now. Now, next team on this list is the Brooklyn Nets, and Ben Simmons. I'm not even going to talk about him. Anyways, the biggest question I have for the Brooklyn Nets, aside from, it would be, will Ben Simmons play? But I know he's not going to. So the biggest question is, will there be any kind of any more trades that Brooklyn decides to make in this regular season? Because they made a deal with Mikal Bridges, to deal away Mikal Bridges to the Knicks, and they've received a huge plethora of draft picks, and so they're committing to a full rebuild. And now the question is, are they going to try and get rid of some more players on their roster, like this one right here, and try to engage with trades amongst other NBA teams to try and improve the roster, or maybe even try to create some space to not only acquire players but also like be able to trade players, because now you have to do that. But the Nets, they've entered into that rebuild mode. And the Nets, it's like really the question is they might not be done dealing because they still have Bojan Bogdanovic, who came back in the Bridges deal, and he could be a pretty valuable trade asset off of despite coming off of a wrist and foot injury and wrist and foot surgery. He is expected to be back in training camp, and when he's healthy, he's a pretty solid option, and he can give you like a solid 15 points and really good three-point shooting. So really, like the question is going to be, are the Nets going to try and trade some more of their pieces? And going forward, every move this season should be made with the next several years in mind if you're Brooklyn. So if they can trade guys like Bogdanovich, Johnson, and Finney-Smith during the season, they could also put themselves in a position to land the number one overall pick in this draft, who a lot of people are thinking it's going to be Cooper Flagg. And even if it's not Cooper Flagg, next year's draft is expected to have a lot of good players, a lot of much more better players than this previous draft in the last season. So just to put that in a little bit of perspective. So next team on this list is the New York Knicks. And the biggest question for them is how badly will they miss Isaiah Hartenstein? Because Isaiah Hartenstein, while he wasn't really, an offensive demon, like a force on the offensive side of the floor, he was a very gritty player that would do a lot of the dirty work, would get a lot of rebounds, and would also get a lot of blocks and do a lot of the tough things that most players wouldn't want to do. And now the biggest question is, are the Knicks going to... Because that was part of the reason why the Knicks were so successful in their offense. Josh Hart and Isaiah Hartenstein being able to just hustle and not only snag boards but also create plays that wind up in the Knicks getting more chances and more possessions of the ball. And that's value. Like, it might not appear on the box score, but as it might not flash on the box score like Jalen Brunson's 40 points, but it does bring tremendous value to the team. It really, really does. So the biggest question is, are they really going to miss Isaiah Hartenstein after they let him go over to OKC? Because a lot of people, the entire Knicks roster, I believe, they really wanted Hartenstein to be a part of the team, and they also wanted OG to be a part of the culture that they were making as well. But it's like unfortunately, they can only pick one. So next team, because we are running a little bit low on time, is the 76ers. Now, obviously, the biggest question that anyone is going to ask about the 76ers is this finally their year? Ever since they had Joel Embiid, they were all like, trust the process. And it's just been, the process has still been ongoing. There have been several different lineups, several different roster changes, all with Joel Embiid at center, and none of them have been able to make it past the second round. And now that the 76ers, they have a really solid big three. Like, there is no complaints about anyone's offensive game or anyone's game about any of these players. Like, Ben Simmons, you could argue that, there was a complaint. He couldn't shoot, but he was still bringing value on the team. Like, that was before he went really, really just bad. He was still bringing value to the team. He just couldn't shoot. And Jimmy Butler, I mean, you could argue that his three-point shooting isn't really as good as it should be, but, he was still a very competent player. And then there's obviously Joel Embiid, but he's also injury-riddled. Now, in this season, there's, nobody that has a problem. None of the core players have a problem with performing under pressure. I mean, You might argue Paul George, but in recent years, Paul George has been pretty good in the postseason and has been delivering in the postseason. Like the farther he took the Clippers to their only Western Conference Finals, and again, the question for the 76ers, it's going to be, is this finally their year? Because they always say it every single time that it's going to be that they got it. This is the best chance that they have, and it always ends up falling short. And finally, we have the Toronto Raptors. Their question is this core that they have, with RJ Barrett and Quickly and Scotty Barnes, is that really the core that you want to build around? I completely understand Barnes, like without a doubt. I want Scotty Barnes to be the face of the Raptors, as well as the number one option on the Raptors. He's a fantastic player and a great, there's no flaw in his game. And you definitely want to build around that young player, but around those two, like RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, not entirely sure. I'm a little bit more sold on RJ Barrett given how he was playing for Canada in the Olympics, but still not entirely sold on that young core. Aside from Barnes, there's that young core, I'm not really sold on it, but that's all that I have for this first segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about Charles Barkley and his comments about the WNBA. So I will be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody